Okay, Matthew, in the cube, thank you. Now, it's been less than 6 years since the US was last hit by unrest over police brutality. The 2014 shooting of Michael Brown led to violent protesting in Ferguson, Missouri, and nationwide calls for reform. But the numbers suggest that overall little has changed. Research gathered by 538 shows that across the US, police are killing people today at roughly the same rate they were before Brown's death in 2014. There have been some improvements. The data found that killings have declined in major cities, but in urban and suburban areas, the number of fatalities has actually been on the rise. Well, in the wake of the 2014 Ferguson protests, part of President Barack Obama's response included forming a special task force on 21st century policing. I'm joined now by one of the members of that task force, Yale University law professor Tracy Mears. Now, good evening to you. Many thanks for joining us on the programme. Now, given what we're seeing today in the US and the task force you're included in, do you think that Obama's initiative has had actually any significant impact when it comes to policing?
I do. And here are two ways of seeing the potential impact. One is, if you look across the country in the United States at the number of police chiefs in this country who have condemned the killing of George Floyd in vocal terms. A Washington Post article recounted that. I don't think that would have happened 10 years ago. I think that is a result of the work that we were able to do on the president's task force in the last 5 years. Second, I think across the country, certainly major cities have adopted many of the recommendations that the task force put out. Those recommendations, achieving those recommendations, however, is not a way to fix policing, but merely a down payment in creating an atmosphere in which we can have a real discussion about what policing is for in this country to create true public safety. Public safety that's not just about how police might help prevent private predation among citizens, but also ensuring that citizens are free from police excess.
Okay, but I guess many would say that it's time to move really beyond this discussion. And as we were just saying, police killings at national level have remained steady. So something is clearly going wrong. And so how can that actually be redressed?
I think there are lots of things that can be redressed, but it is important to understand that nothing about this is going to turn on a dime. We are here because of hundreds of years of investment in racist activities in this country on the part of the government and private actors that create enclaves of poverty and despair that support the kind of protests that you've seen. So there are things we can do quickly, such as making sure that police officers who are fired for acts of excessive force are unable to get a job in another police force. That's hard to do in the United States right now. It doesn't have to be. It should be easy to prevent those folks from having a job. It's also important to invest in making sure that police do less harm now by adopting some of the recommendations that the president's task force recommended around training and procedural justice strategies and tactics for ensuring that people are able to protest safely. But again, investing in these things we can do now are necessary to set the stage for the conversation that we need to have in this country about how to maintain public safety through state investments that just aren't about police use of force.
Okay, and just briefly now, as we were just saying, it's more than a week since George Floyd was killed. Now, 3 officers who witnessed that killing have not faced charges. Well, what kind of message is that sending out to police officers, but also Americans at large?
An incredibly negative message. Police officers need to be accountable for each other. I am currently working as a monitor of the police department in Baltimore, where bystanders in the agency are held accountable for failing to turn in their fellow officers who violate policy, such as what happened in Minneapolis. That's unacceptable. Those kinds of changes requiring individual police officers to be held accountable for actions like that are things that we can do now. I just want to encourage your listeners and in Europe and people here who are watching this play out to say that those kinds of steps are the things we need to do to get to a place where we can engage in wholesale culture change. I don't think there's a world in which we can have an ideal version of the kind of policing that takes place in this country now. We need to reimagine policing.
Needing to reimagine policing. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Tracy Mears there from the Yale University. And still to come.